by Brooke Berg, illustrated by Nathan Alberg. Did you hear about Grace and her poem? The one that won the Poetry Slam's Best New Voice Award? Murmurs Marion as she takes a bite from her sandwich. Yes, I heard. She copied it. She didn't write it herself at all, whispers Jules. Actually, I heard she copied most of it, then changed a few lines, but still she didn't write the whole thing herself, Marion whispered back. Both girls looked across the lunch table at Grace, who was sitting alone. I can't believe a person would lie about something like that, Jules quietly exclaimed. Oh, I know. That's like cheating from somebody's test, but even worse, it's lying because you are taking credit for something you didn't actually write, replies Marion as the lunch bell rings. I'm so excited, says Marion as they walk into their classroom. Mr. Owen said he is going to read some of the papers we turned in last week. I hope he reads mine. As the students take their seats, Mr. Owen pulls a pile of papers from his briefcase and announces, as I said this morning, I am going to read some excerpts from your assignments on the beginnings of the Revolutionary War. Please clear your desks. I want you all to listen carefully because afterwards we will be discussing what you heard. Marion and Jules grin and give each other thumbs up signs before turning to listen. Mr. Owens begins reading from a paper. The Revolutionary War, from the colonists' perspective, was caused by England's practice of taxing the colonies without representation in the English Parliament. England, on the other hand, saw the taxes levied on the colonies as a common-sense way to recover money spent during the French and Indian War, which was fought to defend the colonies. The sugar tax of 1764, followed by the stamp tax of 1765. Marion sits up straighter. She feels proud. She thinks, it's mine. He is reading my paper. Then Mr. Owen puts down the first paper and picks up another. He reads, The revolution from the colonists' perspective was caused by England's practice of taxing the colonies without representation in the English Parliament. England, on the other hand, Marion was shocked. She looked around the room, thinking, who copied from me? How did someone get my paper? I have one final paper to read before we discuss them, Mr. Owen said, and he begins reading. According to Linda Boxer's e-paper titled The American Revolution, the revolution from the colonist perspective was caused by England's practice of taxing the colonies without representation in the English Parliament. England, on the other hand, Marion shrinks down in her seat. She realizes now that no one had copied from her, but she and the other person had copied from the same internet site. But isn't that what you're supposed to do when you're researching and writing a paper? Mr. Owen puts the last paper down, picks up a marker, and writes the word plagiarism on the board in capital letters. Then he turns to the class and says, Okay, what did we hear? Somebody copied, smirks Ernie. And I wonder who. Across the aisle, Grace blushes. Mama. Ignoring Ernie's outburst, Mr. Owen calls on Sol, who has his hand up in the air. Sol, what did you hear? Asked Mr. Owens. 3 people copied from the same place, but one of them put in where the words came from, answers Sol. That's right, replies Mr. Owen. And it is important, and it is an important difference. Go tell Mom and get your demo. Give me a show of hands. How many of you normally use the internet when writing your papers? While slowly raising her hand, Marion looks around the classroom and is relieved to see that all the other kids are raising their hands too. And how many of you, continues Mr. Owens, have copied things from the internet into your own papers? Again, all the kids raise their hands, and Willis asks, if we don't take information from books and the internet, how are we supposed to get the information? Good question, Willis. And that is just what we are going to discuss, replies Mr. Owen.
Mom's not there.
She's in the basement doing the cat litter.
No.
Do you want to stay here with Daddy?
No.
You want to go get your own animal? Go ahead. What we have heard here today is called plagiarism, and it is a serious crime, states Mr. Owen sternly. Everyone looks at him with wide, scared eyes while he continues. Every time you take any part of a book, a paper, or a web page without the permission of the author, or without telling where it came from, you are stealing. If you turn that in as your own words and your own thoughts, you are lying. And if you turn it in for a grade, you are cheating. Marion is so upset that she bursts out, are we going to go to jail? I mean, I didn't mean to do anything wrong. Everyone turns to stare at her, shocked that Marion Hedgehog plagiarized. You? Sputtered Ernie. You cheated? I didn't mean to, wails Marion, her eyes filled with tears. Now, Mr. Owen says. Remember that every one of you raised your hands when I asked if you had copied information from the internet into your own papers. What we need to focus on now is how to use information without plagiarizing again. Mr. Owen asks Willis, raising his hand, will you tell us who wrote the paper that told where the information came from? Mr. Owens looks out into the classroom and nods. Then Grace stands up and says, it was me. I cited my source. Then she walks to the front of the class and explains, I know everyone has heard about the poem I turned in last month and that it wasn't completely mine. I used the first part of a poem that I found in an old book of my aunt's, but I wrote the last half myself. I didn't know that I had plagiarized until someone called me to the office. That's when I learned how not to plagiarize ever again. Thanks, Grace, says Mr. Owen, as Grace takes her seat. There are a couple of simple things you can do that you won't be guilty of plagiarism. First, you can read through the material, then close the book and turn off the internet and write about what you just read. We have practiced summarizing in language arts, and you can do that with what you read for any assignment. Mr. Owen interrupts Jules, raising her hand. Yes, Jules, replies Mr. Owen. Jules continues, that is so hard to do because when I read something I can't think of a better way to say it. I don't have the right words. You're not alone in thinking that, replies Mr. Owen. And it leads us to the next way. You can use information straight from another author. When an author's words seem better than your own, and when you use someone else's words mixed in with some of your own, like in a summary, you should figure out a way to put the author's name and the name of the source into your paragraph, the way Grace did in her American Revolution paper. But there will still be times when you want to use the exact words from another author. To do that, you must start by quotation marks around the exact words you use. But I thought quotation marks were used when someone is talking, says Marion. They are. And since you are using the writer's exact words in your paper, the original author is talking. Whenever you use a direct quote, you must also cite the source. In other words, include a list of internet sites, books, magazines, encyclopedias, and other sources you used. That list is called a works cited list. People also call it a bibliography. Won't people think you're cheating or dumb when you use quotes? Asks Ernie. Well, replies Mr. Owen, there is a limit to the number of quotes you should use in your papers. After all, I want to know that you are thinking, not just what other authors thought. You should also try to summarize first and use quotes only to help illustrate a particular point. If there are no more questions, Mr. Owen, let's head to the Library Media Center, where Mrs. Carlson is going to help us learn how to correctly cite sources, and you will get a chance to practice. Grace, wait up, cries Marion, as she and Jules hurried up to catch up with her. Sorry that you got in trouble for plagiarizing your poem. I guess we have all been guilty of the same thing. Yes, says Grace, plagiarizing really is lying, cheating, and stealing all rolled up into one, and I will never do that again. Me either, echoes Jules and Marion as the three hurry hand in hand into the media center. That's it.
It's been 11 minutes.
Yeah.